everybody, welcome to Game Breaking News with me, Jeff Grubb, your host from GiantBomb.com. Thank you for tuning in. In this episode, we're going to be talking about trust in the US being permanently damaged, but at least we might get the Switch 2 pre-orders soon. It's going to be a good one because we have Shawn McDowell on the show. Shawn, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, GG's. How about you?
I'm doing good. yeah, it's Jeff Grubb with 2 G's now. That's how it goes. I don't know. It's been a week. It's been like 4 weeks in 1 week. Been a hell of a thing. Definitely
so damn busy, man.
Right, busy and annoyed at everything, and it's like trying to keep up with the news is, as always, as stupid as it's ever been. And then I'm just like, I get to the end of the day, and I'm like, I just want the Switch 2. I just want the Switch 2. That's all I want at this point. I want to hold the thing. I don't even want to play the games. I kind of just want to hold it. Then I'll want to play the games.
You want to know that's real? When you said on the Bombcast the other day that the Switch Direct was less than a week ago, that was just... No, that can't be right. What are you talking about?
Yep, like 6 months worth of news. And like Switch 2 news specifically happened in that time, let alone everything else that had happened.
Everything's just been crazy. You know what? I'm in my comfort zone now. I'm proudly wearing my Combo Breaker t-shirt, and I'm looking forward to buying many, many more of these in the years to come.
We'll hopefully get everything kind of somewhat back to normal, although, it's weird how things can be so messed up still, and we're like, well, this is better than it was, 6 minutes ago, so I think I'll accept this. That's fine. It's weird how it can go that way. I'm still just kind of keeping my ears open, waiting for them to say, here's what's going on with Switch 2 pre-orders. At this point, do they just like come up with a new plan and announce it next week? Or do you think that they've been like waiting in the wings? Obviously, we have no idea, but I guess what's your hope?
Oh, my hope is that everything goes back to normal. I know that won't be the case. I know way too much to know that won't be the case. But yeah, I just hope that we can get resolution, because everything just seems so uncertain for a variety of reasons, not just in games, but in everything else. And I can't just... You're right. One of those things is just like, hey, video games, this is what I know. It would be cool if we can get this figured out on our end while all of this is all messed up.
Yep, absolutely. All right, let's explain what we do here. Most weekdays, I, Jeff Grubb, will help piece your gaming life back together. That includes breaking news and maybe even some of our own original reporting. For all these topics, I'll get the input of a bona fide expert who will make me look smart. If you're watching live on Twitch, welcome. You can always listen to the show later on podcast feeds by searching for Game Breaking News, or find the RSS feed on GiantBomb.com. You can also catch the show later on YouTube. Hello, YouTube. All right, we have a lot to get into, so let's start the morning mess. There, I did it. I knew I was going to do it. It's been a minute. Let's break some gaming news.
It's a mess, let's be real.
Absolutely, it still is. With Switch 2 price remains in limbo as new tariffs reduced and paused, with one major exception. This is from Eddie McHugh at GameSpot. In the wake of a crumbling global market, U.S. President Donald Trump announced today that he is scaling back his original tariff plan, lowering tariffs significantly basically everywhere except China. It remains to be seen what this means for the Switch 2, which was supposed to begin U.S. pre-orders today, and this story's from yesterday. Trump said on Wednesday that tariffs in most places will be lowered down to 10%, but China is facing an increased 125% tariff rate. Both rate changes take effect immediately. Overall, Trump said he is initiating a 90-day pause to new tariffs. 90 days from today would be July 8th. So maybe Donkey Kong Bonanza can get in underneath there. Everyone wants to know what this means for the Switch 2, and we don't know. According to the Financial Times, after the first Trump presidency, Nintendo shifted some manufacturing to Vietnam and Cambodia in response to Trump's position on trade with China. And like the timeline there is, they started doing that in 2019 because they weren't sure if he was going to be president again. They thought it could get worse in China, so they started building in those costs at that time. The report said 50% of Switch 2 production has now come out of Vietnam and Cambodia in recent months. The tariff rate for these countries as of last week was 46% and 49% respectively. Those were the new tariffs that Trump was putting on those countries. But now they're both 10%, which is still more than it was a couple of weeks ago. It's still more than what it was. Let's see. That's effective immediately. In theory, this would seemingly help Nintendo keep the Switch 2 price at $450, or at least close to it. But no one knows for sure, and Nintendo is yet to comment. as we get to noon Eastern time here on Thursday, Shawn, still no comment from Nintendo. We are now a day past when pre-orders were supposed to begin. It feels like, okay, back to normal, although obviously this is still such uncharted territory, still the unprecedented times as everyone's so sick of hearing, and still only a 90-day pause to these tariffs. And we know how this president is. He gets bored and wants to go back and causing mayhem again because it gets him attention. And I feel like if you're a company trying to plan a release, a launch, you'll take advantage of this. And we'll talk about that here in a second. But can you make any long-term plans, which is the whole entire idea of running a business in this moment?
No, definitely not. Like, again, uncertainty may be overplayed, but that definitely is the word right now. We have no idea what's going to happen because we're usually not in a situation this messed up, is maybe the polite way of putting it. And so I have no idea what Nintendo's plan is going to be, or any company for that matter who is trying to put something out there, trying to launch anything along those lines. Maybe they do take advantage of this window, I guess, to like stick with the original plan as closely as they can and keeping the price low. But again, it makes more sense from a business point of view to just have the higher price, and then you have baked in all of your risks associated with adjusting the price from there.
Yes,
which Nintendo has done for Nintendo reasons. Like the 3DS isn't selling, so we're cutting this from what it was $230 down to $170, I believe it was.
Is that what it is? Yeah, I can't.
Or $250 down to $170. It might have been $250
yeah, I think
down
it was $250. Yeah.
Yeah, which, what a wild price for that thing. But they do that because, this thing isn't selling and we need this thing. We got to scramble to get these out the door. It's not because everyone is put in this position where we can't put out goods. We can't put out things at prices that people expect because people don't have the money to pay for these higher goods. It's the politics of it all. You know, politics are everything right now. Unavoidable. That's what we're going to do. Wages are not going up to match these increased tariffs because the tariffs are going to trickle down to the consumer because these companies aren't going to eat the cost. Smaller companies cannot eat the cost, and bigger companies, they're bigger companies. Yes, sure, agreed, if that's what you want to call it. But that's what they do. Yes. It's what we should expect.
I mean, if I was running a big business like that, I would do it too. Like you got, like that's the way the system's set up. You can't be the one company the one company eating the cost. You can maybe eat the cost a little bit, be like fair, like meet them in the middle. But everyone's going to make the customer eat some of the cost.
Yeah, because hypothetically, if the increase was 50% is the tax on everything, if your profit margin is like let's say maybe $30 hypothetically, let's say like you're making $30 on these consoles,
sure,
and suddenly 50% of the cost needs to go up, you're not going to go from making $30 to napkin math here, losing 200 or whatever the hell it would end up being. You're just not going to do that. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think Kyle Orland over at Ars Technica talked to some analysts, and they're like, we do think that they built in the 10% to 20% tariff risk, especially on China, into this $450 price, or $450 price. God, I'm like, that can't be right. That's too high. Nope, that's right, $450 price. And of course, they also built in a lot of other risk in there. And it's like, okay, well, at this point, you might have to just say, this is the risk that we're now covering with that $450 thing. And if anything else happens, we kind of just have to hope things go well everywhere else.
I think people saw that Doug Bowser quote of like, the tariff news is fresh. And so people were saying, see, they didn't bake in tariffs at all. No. That's what you were getting at the Bombcast. Like, they build in all of these things when setting a price, because you're not going to have Nintendo of America specifically, a company all about, as you put it, the law firm.
Yep.
They're not going to look at everything that's going on in the world and say, well, Trump's president now. Yeah, we're just, nothing's going to happen with these tariff talk. We don't need to bake that into it. They're not going to ignore what's happening in the world. They baked in a set amount, and it's just way higher than we were expecting.
Yep. let's see here. Let's kind of just go along with all these stories here because they're all related. Nintendo Switch 2 U.S. price is unlikely to rise if Trump tariffs remain at 10%, according to analysts. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. The U.S. price of the Nintendo Switch 2 is likely to remain at $450 if President Trump's global tariffs remain at 10%, an analyst said. Last week, Trump introduced a blanket 10% tariff on all imports, with countries like China, Vietnam, and Japan, which Trump calls among the worst offenders, getting larger tariffs of 54%, 46%, and 24%, respectively. Since most of Nintendo's imports in the U.S. come from Vietnam and Cambodia, Trump's decision to apply a 46% tariff on Vietnam could potentially have an effect on the price of Nintendo hardware, most notably the upcoming Switch 2. As a result, last week, Nintendo said it was delaying Switch 2 pre-orders, blah, blah, blah. However, while Trump has since increased China's tariffs up to 125%, and honestly, I feel like maybe it's gone up since we started the show, who knows, he has decided to pause all other tariff hikes for 90 days, meaning his 10% tariff applies to all other countries affected, including Vietnam. According to a new report at Bloomberg, Trump's decision to pause the hikes means it's likely that Nintendo will keep the U.S. Switch 2 price at $450, at least until the 46% tariffs kick back in. Does that sound right to you? Because I think they obviously can't feel good about it, but I do think this takes away their card of fully, like, people will go, well, no, there are. I heard there are no more tariffs, and of course there's a 10% tariff, so it is going to be more expensive for them. And then there is the sword of Damocles, and I never used that phrase, right? But the sword of Damocles of the 90-day a time bomb of these tariffs returning, hanging over them still. And, if you are a betting man, if you are someone who's like looking at this, it's like, I think it's 50-50 that by 90 days from now, so much can happen. So many other scandals could start. So many other distractions could happen that 90-day thing happens and no one even notices because he doesn't bring it up and he just lets it ride. And he's like, actually, we're not going to do that. Forget about it. Or 90 days from now, something else is happening. And to distract from that, he does say, hey, we're back. And the tariffs are back exactly what I said they were. You have no idea as these companies, but I do think that this is right, that they will have a harder time raising the price in this moment because they were already like asking a lot from consumers who has like, we know all the reasons why Nintendo did the prices that they did. We can lay them all, lay them all out in front of people. And yet if a mother's going to the store to buy a Switch 2 for her kid and she sees that price, I'm not going to be the guy that pops out from behind the counter and saying, this is why it's so high. Like, how does that help her? That doesn't help her. She doesn't give a shit. That's Nintendo's problem, not her problem. So, and Nintendo has to deal with that as well. So I think in this moment, they are probably going to have to just ride with these prices and get these Switch 2s into people's hands and hope that they can make it up selling games, which they very likely will be able to.
Yeah, that's a very good point because, in our little bubble here where we're talking to the audience and we're trying to like convey everything and explain everything, I can hold up a Steam Deck and say, hey, it's around this, y'all paid $400 for this. You're getting a better device here. A little bit more isn't like a crazy thing to do. Yep. But you're right. You can't do that to the mom who walks into Walmart, sees $450 and says, didn't we pay like $300 or less for the last one? Why is it so much more? $450 is probably the maximum that they wanted to do.
I agree.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's Nintendo being Nintendo. They would have wanted $400 because it's a more attractive price, but they're like, we don't do loss leaders, buddy. So they did the $450 instead. That sounds right to me. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what I'm having trouble following any of this, to be frank, because it's so confusing.
The Chinese tariffs, people in chat are letting us know.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
145% tariffs now on China. So
145?
Yep, 145% tariffs. I mean, obviously, you just can't sell things from China in the United States anymore. Not without laundering them somehow, finding some other way around it. That it's just going to be straight up impossible. So. Okay, so what is the answer if you're Nintendo? Well, again, there are no good answers, but there are some maneuvers they can make. That leads us to this next story. Nintendo stockpiling Switch 2s in the US, even though it could still be selling them at a loss with the current tariffs. So, this is from Ethan Gotch at Kotaku. The Switch 2 is shaping up to be one of the messiest console launches ever in the United States, at least from Nintendo's point of view. The company's new $450 console is set to come out on June 5th. But it's also being forced to navigate a chaotic circus around tariffs that could torpedo the rollout at any moment. Bloomberg now reports that the Mario Maker has been diverting Switch 2 shipments to stockpile them in the US before tariffs potentially skyrocket again. But even in the current environment, some analysts believe Nintendo would be selling the console at a potential loss. I mean, that seems unavoidable at this point. Vietnam, where the majority of Switch 2s are manufactured, was set to be hit with a 46% tariff earlier this week, but President Trump backed off at the last minute as the stock and bond markets went into free fall. And you know what? They still aren't looking very good. I mean, the stock market bounced back, but the bond market's still looking very scary. Those reciprocal tariffs, reciprocal, including 49% on Cambodia and 24% on Japan, were paused for 90 days and replaced in the meantime with a flat 10% tax, blah, blah, blah. It now appears that Nintendo has been moving extra Switch 2 shipments to the U.S. in recent months to try and get ahead of the current upcoming tariffs. There's a analyst that Bloomberg talked to that says it seems like now what Nintendo's doing is taking every Switch made in Vietnam and sending them to the United States. If they're made in China, Cambodia, those are going to the rest of the world. But everyone made in Vietnam is going to the United States because in this moment, today, for now, that's a 10% tariff. And they're like, he's got a 90-day pause on it. That, of course, we know that could go away. He could get annoyed in the next couple of days and say, screw the 90-day pause. They understand that, but they're going to just hope, against hope, that stays, try to get as many Switch 2s from Vietnam into the United States in that 90-day period. And then if something changes, they will have to adapt at that point. But in the meantime, this is the strategy. And, they don't want to be spending their energy on this, but they kind of have to in this moment. The United States is a market you can't ignore for video games, especially if you are a console manufacturer. That's like, the console market kind of lives and dies by the United States market. Obviously,
or console specifically, we're by far the biggest, right?
Yes, and there are obviously other very important markets, but you kind of can't make this work unless you have the United States, and the Japanese Nintendo leadership absolutely understands that. That's
now when you're planning to do international launches and everything, worldwide launches.
So they're trying to figure it out, and I'm not getting my hopes up that this means that nothing's going to change in terms of the price, other than all the things we just talked about how it's going to be difficult for them from a public relations standpoint. But I think they're just going to have to accept any losses on this console for now, and if those 46%, 49% tariffs return, then I'm expecting a price increase at that point. What other choice do they have, Shawn?
Not much, really, because like we said at the top of the show, you can only lose so much before in the console space it no longer makes sense. People do like to bring up that the other console manufacturers do sell the consoles at a loss. Eventually, maybe they break even or make a little bit of money on them as manufacturing costs go down. But you start by selling the console at a little bit of a loss, or maybe a big loss. Not console per se, but that's what Gabe seemed to be implying with the Steam Deck, the entry level one. And then you get people in your ecosystem, get them buying games, and you make a profit on those things. But if you're taking a huge loss on the console, the problem is attach rate. And in this first year of the Switch 2, what will the attach rate be, especially when games are as high as $80 for brand new Switch 2 games or Switch 2 versions of games?
We don't matter Nintendo, that, right? Like I'll probably buy 3 games, 4 games. I'm gonna get nuts by more than that. We know that we are the exception, and that the attach rate is determined by families, more casual players. And they're going to get maybe one $80 game. Maybe. That's
exactly what tends to happen with these games. Like, you see Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold. It's some astronomical number at this point. Isn't it like 50 million or something?
I think it's like approaching 60 million. I actually lost track. So, yeah, it's a ton.
And maybe they're counting bundles. I actually forget how Nintendo does that. Yeah. Okay. But either way, that's a lot of copies of that game. But then you start to see the sales numbers drop off as you go down the list of best sold games. And that's what happens, is because everyone gets Mario Kart, but then they don't really need anything else. That's their game. And then they buy another one, like a few months down the road if something catches their eye. They're not like us picking up basically every first-party Nintendo game. So you can't rely on that. They can't rely on that. They can't build that into the strategy right now. So I guess this is a weird point that we're at, where maybe Nintendo does just have to suck it up, right?
Yep. It's Wizard of Blah in chat says, I just imagine cargo ships having to keep making U-turns in the sea depending on the tariffs. Lol. And it's like, you're not you're not that far off. It's like so
Not
weird.
that far off,
It's so
probably.
weird to like, because of this job, like start paying attention to like how shipping ports work. But apparently what's happened is there are massive ships with cargo on them, you know, these massive cargo containers, and there's hundreds of those, and they each have like 40,000 tons of goods in there that are sitting in ports just waiting like for the green light to unload. And that's causing backups, that's causing other issues. So it's like even Nintendo trying to get as many Switch 2s here as possible are going to encounter just logistical problems. And you know, there's also apparently like different fees that are also going up simultaneously, unrelated to all this stuff. For when you bring ships to the United States and you go to a port, you have to pay fees, and apparently those fees were going up. So what they've started doing is like, instead of like hitting Seattle, Oakland, and then LA, they're just all going to LA. And so that's also causing a backup at the LA port, which is the biggest port in the United States, other than maybe at least on the West Coast. And so that's also causing logistical issues. So there's other reasons why we might not have enough Switch 2s, why they might have costs associated with that. It is a complete mess across the board.
Yeah.
And then, you know,
No
of course, you know, the tariffs are directly related to those companies just keeping those cargo ships there unloaded. So, yeah, it's, I don't know. I you know, Nintendo's might have to just grin and bear it here for a little bit. They might have to just say, okay, I guess this is, you know, we'll grimace and try to pretend to smile and talk about how all this stuff is worth it because Mario Kart 8 or Mario Kart World is so special and has so much stuff. So of course it's worth this price. And that's how they talk to us. So it's not going to be satisfying when they actually come back with the their answer for what is happening with pre-orders, the price, anything else. But whatever. I'm still that sucker, Sean. I'm still that sucker who needs the Switch 2 so bad that I'm willing to do it, but I don't blame anyone who is feeling like I need to just sit this out because either I don't care enough about the games, that price is too high, all this news is depressing, even that's not Nintendo's fault. I can get why you're like, I don't want to deal with this, and then Switch 2 makes me think about it, so I just want to sit it out.
Yeah, I try to think of it the perspective of, you know, like 2 years ago before I had this job, what would I have done in this situation? Oh, you know, when I was buying every game, buying every console, you know, I had to be responsible for all that. And the thing that I would give up is everything else, because that's where I am. I want to play Mario Kart World. I want to play Metroid Prime 4 in the best quality that I can. I want to play Bonanza. I'll give up everything else to play the one thing that I want. And I think maybe that's just what people have to do at this point, as much as that absolutely sucks, because y'all, we're still in Nintendo jail enough that I'm still buying all this myself, by the way. Like, that's still going to happen.
Yep.
I'm just lucky enough to get the other stuff for free.
Yeah, I'm like even like debating. I'm like, should I even ask for a Switch 2? I mean, I will, but I have not yet. And it's just
doesn't hurt to
it doesn't hurt to ask.
So, yeah.
I'm not expecting.
I'm going to be doing what everyone else is. You know, I'm going to sell my Switch 1. I'm maybe some games that I'm not playing. I'm going to do what makes sense for me so I can get that hardware and play the thing that I want to play, because the world is crumbling around us, and I just need a little more escapism, you know?
I'm gonna Klarna that shit. Give me 4 payments. I don't care. What's the interest rate? Don't tell me.
Oh yeah, I'm putting that in the PayPal. You know,
yeah, PayPal. Yeah, pay in 4. Let's go.
Oh, I ain't doing the pay in 4. I'll take the 8% APR or whatever, man. That's what I gotta do at this point. Jesus Christ.
All right, Sean, let's take a break. Let's come back. There's a little bit more Nintendo news, and we'll get into some other stuff after that. Let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. All right, I think if I hit this button, everybody, the intro should not play again. Let's find out together. There we go. All right, let's do it. Here we are back in the show. Switch 2 edition titles contain both the game and upgrade on the cart. Nintendo clarifies. This is from Chris Scullion at VGC. Yeah, right? This is like a little bit of a... Okay, this is the opposite of what we heard last week. It just seemed like so much was uncertain. Nintendo did a bad job, I think, with the Switch 2 news. Put all the price stuff aside, all that, messaging over in a box, just telling us how things work. They were bad at it. They just straight up caused so much confusion, and there was a lot of like dark clouds around things that didn't need dark clouds.
I think for some things, yes. For other things, it was also people misinterpreting things,
for sure.
And then that snowballs. You know, like no shade, so I won't say names, but like I saw someone very prominent quote the like $90 physical thing, and it's like, well, that That was just someone's assumption, as far as I know. So
that
may
one
not
did get pretty
report on
bad.
that as news.
You know,
so, yeah.
but you know, they were letting the press do their dirty work a little bit. Nintendo,
Yes,
where they're like,
and that's how we get into these kerfuffles is by them not making things clear. Which
exactly,
very fair point.
Yeah. So here we are. Again, Chris Scully and VGC. Nintendo has clarified the situation regarding physical Switch 2 edition cards. Confusion arose last week when a Nintendo customer service representative told one user that the Switch 2 edition games would include the base Switch 1 game as well as the upgrade in the form of a download code. Nintendo has now stated that that is not the case and that the Switch 2 edition games will contain both the game and the upgrade on the cartridge itself. In a statement to Vooks, a Nintendo spokesperson said, physical versions of Switch 2 edition games will include the original Nintendo Switch game and its upgrade pack all on the same card, i.e. they are exclusively Nintendo Switch 2 game cards with no download code. Alternatively, some publishers may release Nintendo Switch 2 edition games as download codes in physical packaging with no game card. That's still the quote there. So they're like leaving room open for third party to do what third party's going to do. But for The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch 2 edition, you're going to get a Switch 2 game box, and inside there is going to be a Switch 2 game card and nothing else. It's not going to be the Switch. It's not going to just be a Switch 1 game card and then a code so you can get the DLC for that, or, you know, the upgrades through a code. It's just going to be one game card, which I think is what most people were really hoping for here, because they just want their game card to be sort of a long-term thing that just works for forever. Right.
It's a peace of mind thing at this point. I think everyone's starting to realize that physical games, as great as they are, stuff happens to them. Like, you can't count on them forever. We are in the age now where a Blu-ray that has everything all on the disc is going to last probably for the rest of your lifetime. But some of those older ones, you know, stuff happens. I think what's interesting here is that, yeah, I definitely didn't see this coming. I definitely expected it to be just a Switch 1 cart and then a download code for the expansion pass, or the upgrade, whatever the hell they're calling it, the Switch 2 version, Switch 2 edition. And people thought some people were going, that's wild, that's weird, why would they do that? Game companies have been doing that for a decade. That's been a very normal thing for a lot of video games, where if there's like a cross-gen version, if there's a definitive edition. I remember even, I think Destiny, was it the Taken King, the first expansion or whatever it was? Even that, it was the disc itself was just like a patched Destiny 1, and I got a DLC voucher.
Yep.
And
I was expecting that because I'm so used to seeing that at this point.
Yeah, Nintendo even has been doing that with like, at least here in the US, it's actually different internationally, but here in the US, they will just include like the Zelda expansion pass in with a little thing, the card that has Breath of the Wild on it. So if they sell a bundle to you, they pop that in because they can keep manufacturing the Switch 1 version of the game. That's the baseline. That's what they can put in the Switch 1 box, and then they would be able to put it in the Switch 2 box and then just print off a bunch of codes.
Exactly.
But
cheaper.
This is even better to see. This is cool. I like that. For the sake of preservation, for the sake of, especially this way, you can trade or sell that all-in-one version of the game. You don't have to worry about, like I was talking about with, say, Destiny or something, where I've already used the code, so the value of the game has plummeted because I just have like basically a 1.0 version of the game and then nothing else in the box. So that's cool to see. It makes the game retain value, you know?
Yep, I do wanted to point this out. Kane Highwind reminded me here that separate from the upgrade stuff, apparently, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Switch 2 edition does not include expansion pass content. So, like the DLC. Nintendo.
It's DLC.
Yep, and this is not a Game of the Year edition, although just about any other publisher on Earth would have just included that stuff. But hey, Nintendo.
I think Sony's also does stuff like this. Sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not aware.
So not like you get a director's cut, which is the all-in-one edition, but I think other ones do the DLC separately. I could be wrong about that one, but I'm pretty sure I've seen that.
When you so the cards themselves are red, is that right?
Yes.
For Switch 2. When you see a red like game card, cartridge, CD, DVD, do you have a game that comes to mind? Because I do.
Doom on Super Nintendo.
Doom on Super Nintendo is definitely like right there. I think it was
Maximum Carnage.
Maximum Carnage. That's the one.
Yeah.
Yes. That's not
because those are the two on Super Nintendo, right?
And they just like blare in my brain whenever I think of a Red video game. Regvelos is saying Pokemon Red. Yeah, there's Popple Tree and Mechanized saying Maximum Carnage. Yep.
It stood out so much in that sea of gray cartridges sticking out of your Super Nintendo to see, what's that red one?
All right, how about blue? You have one for blue?
Well, blue, I do think Pokemon Blue and Pokemon games, but also Tony Hawk on N64.
Pro Skater. Yep.
Yeah. Pro Skater 2, I think specifically.
I thought it was one, but it could be
maybe
two.
It was one.
It's one or two. I can't remember which one, but I thought it was.
That's another one where I didn't have it on N64, but when I would go to the N64 section of a used game store, I'm like, what's that blue N64?
You have to check it out.
What the?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then yellow would be Donkey Kong 64 for me.
Yeah, and that's another one where Pokemon Yellow is so obvious, but DK64, yeah, definitely.
All right, micro SD Express cards sell out in Japan a month and a half before the Nintendo Switch 2 launch. This is from Alberto Garrido at Game Reactor. We're less than 2 months away from the launch of Nintendo Switch 2, the next generation console that will bring a host of new features while maintaining the hybrid format that made its predecessor so successful. Forecasts, despite discontent over the price hike compared to the previous generation, remain positive, and it is expected to be the most successful console launch in history. There was a revision, it's not going to be quite as good, but it's still going to be the most successful launch in history. And it seems that some of its add-ons also include that this will be the case. And it seems that hang on, I'm sorry, I messed that up. And it seems that some of its add-ons also indicate that this will be the case, such as the storage expansion in the form of micro SD Express cards. It turns out that these micro SD memory cards, different from the ones that could be used in the Switch 1, have already sold out in Japan, as reported by Japanese portal GDM. The Express cards are out of stock not only in shops in Akihabara, but also across the country, and this has caused a stir that has even appeared in the Japanese mainstream media. I mean, I for sure, I would imagine that there probably weren't already a ton of micro SD Express cards in retail shops, especially in any country, even Japan. Although, Akihabara, you expect to have quite a few, but people are going to run on these things. You're going to need them. I'm not 256 gigabytes, which is what's built in, I believe, is not enough for me for sure. I like to have a handful of games. I'll probably just install Zeldas. I'm at least one of them, but probably both. Just try them out, both of them, right at launch, and those are going to be pretty beefy right out of the gate. I guess they're not huge, but that's going to run out pretty quick. So I'm going to want one, but I'm probably not going to get a 1 terabyte. Yeah, what are you thinking?
I'm buying physical, bitch. I don't gotta worry about that.
Right? Yeah, that's you know what? Switch 2, you still don't have to install the games.
You don't have to install, dude.
Actually, I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
That's
why it took me a long time to get a big micro SD for my Switch 1.
Yeah, and the game cards they're going to read faster. I think they're almost certainly using similar improved storage technology. So that's a good sign. I like.
If I was getting codes for work, obviously it would be nice to have higher storage capacity. And a lot of people are going to go digital only with that. And this is kind of, you could say, the digital tax. On top of the fact that digital is still as expensive as physical, which is hilarious. It should not be that way. But yeah, having to buy the storage to go with it, because as we've gone over, this is really fast storage, so the price is going to be at premium until manufacturing can go down. But yeah, if I'm buying my own games, I'm just going to buy the physical copy and just toss them in my carrying case if I'm on the go.
Yeah.
Now, granted, third-party games are going to be huge,
and the game
because
key
they're
cards,
huge on everything,
right? Not that
game key cards. So which is primarily third-party games. I don't think I've seen a single Nintendo one have
I don't think
that.
So either.
Yeah, so it's going to be your stuff like Street Fighter 6, which is like a gigantic download naturally, and that's what I'll use the storage for. Those few AAA games that I might want to play on the Switch too.
See,
but also there will be exceptions. I saw Cyberpunk. They're actually going out of their way. They did this with Witcher 3 as well, I believe. They're going out of their way to get the 64 gigabyte. Finally, Jeff, you're getting your 64 gigabyte cards
it's
for
real.
Cyberpunk. It's real now, yeah. We can say it.
Yeah, I think that so Zelda is 18 gigabytes, and the Tears of the Kingdom was 18 gigabytes. Breath of the Wild is 13.5 gigabytes. You ever get the sense that Nintendo specifically designs their games working backward from only using the 32 gigabyte card. They're like, we got to figure out a way to get this stuff down as little as possible. No ideas that are going to require bigger storage.
Textures in Nintendo games aren't that big, Jeff.
Yep. Yeah, they have
art
their
style
methods.
goes a long way in both getting the game to run as well as storage. Because some of those Wii U games, going back a little bit, HD, but boy were they tiny,
Yep. Let's see. Yeah, according to CDPR, the 64 gigabytes is the max, but that might just be for third parties. I bet it's the max that they would. Maybe this generation we get 128, but I don't think so. That would be so expensive. They're just going to 64 gigabytes will be the max, and then if anyone has a game bigger than that, it's just going to be a game key card.
It would need to be roughly as fast as those SD cards, and there's not a chance in hell they're going to have 128 ones that are easily accessible to people. No?
Yes, and that it would definitely significantly increase the cost. That's why we didn't get 64 gigabyte cards on the Switch One, even though they were there as an option. So technically, real.
You still haven't proven that. I'm still looking for the evidence.
Zelda Wind Waker Switch 2 GameCube release doesn't rule out HD port. We heard about this yesterday. I don't think we talked about this on the show, though. This is from Liam Doolin at Nintendo Life. Last week, Nintendo confirmed The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker would be sailing onto the Switch 2 as part of the GameCube library at launch. And still, Sean, when I read that was just last week, I'm still reeling.
That can't be right.
It's still just last week. If you're worried this might rule out the Wii U HD version of the game making a return one day, it seems there's still hope. Tim Geddes of Kind of Funny Games spoke to Nintendo of America's Senior Vice President of Product Development, Nate Bildorf, and was informed all options are still on the table. Here's what he had to say via VGC. I also sat down with Nate and got to ask a whole bunch of questions, and in typical Nintendo fashion, we didn't get too many answers. But I did ask if having the Wind Waker on Nintendo Switch Online precludes it from the Switch 2 getting the actual Wii U port at some point, and he was very quick to say no, all options are on the table. And I guess there are other examples of games coming to getting remasters after hitting Nintendo Switch Online. But I'm looking if they mentioned that here in the story. Geddes also acknowledges how there are already examples of games available on Switch Online that you can obtain in other ways. Obviously, nothing's confirmed one way or another, but there are many examples of games that are on Nintendo Switch Online, and you can get them in a different way, whether it's a remake or the same port version or whatever it is. But essentially, it was never say never. So, I'm still not holding my breath.
Yeah, I feel like this is because it was maybe, no shade to Tim, maybe a bit of a loaded question. Because when you ask a Nintendo person specifically,
say something will never happen.
Will this never happen? Or give me a definitive statement.
Especially Nintendo America.
Especially Nintendo America, they will always say, well, we can't really comment, nothing's off the table. They give these types of responses a lot. So I wouldn't necessarily read too much into this one, but yeah, it is just a thing of, anything can happen. The news here is that, yes, just because a classic game is released into the service doesn't mean that it could not be available as part of an enhanced version elsewhere. Zelda is just the only example that would really make sense for us to be talking about right now.
Yeah, my read on the kind of what happened here is GameCube seemed like the kind of thing that they were going to save as one special difference for the Switch Pro, and they were going to be like, if you get a Switch Pro, just kind of like they did with was it something only worked on new 3DS? Was it Super Nintendo? There was something.
Yeah, Super Nintendo games.
Yeah, I think they were going to do that, and so when they started planning that out, that would put the HD ports to the side. Something that again I heard years and years ago, even before the Switch Pro stuff, that was basically done and ready to go. Although they have a lot of those that we still haven't seen. And so I think they've just been like, we want to focus on the service. Having the service be valuable is important to us. That this is a way that we, they told investors how important having regular income from these services is to them to help even out the highs and lows of transitioning between generations. And when they moved all that stuff to Switch 2, it was like, okay, that's already on the side. We're saving Zelda Wind Waker for this. And then Twilight Princess could get the same treatment, Yeah. The GameCube version could easily end up on NSO.
Yeah. Who knows what they're doing? Because, it's become very obvious recently that some of the stuff that Nate the Hate, our buddy, has known for a long time now is first starting to come out. And he's the one who has been talking about that Fire Emblem game for a long, long time now. So May we're at the point where some of this stuff just doesn't make sense for them anymore. Who knows? But as far as we know, that's the kind of project that exists, and they're just kicking it around for some reason.
Yep. Yeah. It's really hard to parse like how Nintendo decides to keep these things on the shelf for years. Like Advance Wars, when that happened, it was like there was a war in Ukraine, and this game's about war. We would just feel bad releasing it.
That makes sense. Yeah.
We can make sense of that. Fire Emblem being done. And being done like for at this point at least 2 years or around 2 years, but it's getting very close to 2 years if it's not
Zelda,
already that amount
those other Metroid Primes, whatever they're doing with all that stuff. It's like who knows at this point? I guess. It's
hard to figure out why they make the decision not to put them out. Obviously
and maybe some of the stuff, like Donkey Kong took us a long time to see Donkey Kong because it was a Switch 2 roughly launch game. Yeah. Maybe that's all that's happening here is that they have some strategy for it later down the road that we'll see it and go got it. That's how it slots in.
Yeah, I think this is a part of an overall risk mitigation strategy of just like we want to have games for a rainy day. Not a lot of other companies can afford to do that. We like to spread out stuff on a calendar anyhow. So we're going to put out something here and here. We're going to kind of have a big future calendar, and we are going to have a bucket that is like when there's a gap that like feels bad, we can pull something out of that and plop it in there. I think the Zelda specifically make it that has felt like they've said it publicly they want to have one Zelda project per year, and they've had one every year without fail and without having to go to the HD ports. So that feels like, hey, if we get to a point where it's like we are getting close to the next Zelda, and we were expecting that this year, we're going to save it for that time. I could see that.
Do you think maybe
that would be my hope?
Maybe that's been one where they say to themselves, we don't need to release this. So it's if a project slips, then they they hit the button. Yeah,
I think it's exactly. I think they have a plan for. All right, this year it is that Age of Imprisonment, and honestly, and the upgraded versions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. So that's quite a few. Yeah. But then next year, it's like I bet they have something else for Zelda. We'll see at that point. But like. A few years from now, they're expecting a new big 3D mainline Zelda, and they'll expect that for a certain year. And if that needs extra time, just like it always does, they have a game like the HD ports to slot in at that point. That would be, I think that could easily be how this all goes down. All right, let's get over here to Ubisoft says players suing over the crew shutdown shouldn't have expected to own the game forever. This is from Jordan Miller at VGC. Ubisoft has again argued that players buying video games shouldn't expect to own the game forever. This argument stems from Ubisoft's decision to shut down The Crew last year. In December 2023, the publisher quietly delisted The Crew from digital storefronts and confirmed that the online-only game would no longer be playable as of April 2024. After almost a decade of support, we will be decommissioning The Crew 1 on March 31st, 2024, it said at the time. We understand this may be disappointing for players still enjoying the game, blah, blah, blah. 2 players impacted by the shutdown launched legal action against Ubisoft, accusing Ubisoft of violating California consumer protection laws. At the time, the plaintiffs claimed that Ubisoft misled players by telling them that they were buying a game, when in fact all they were was renting a limited license to access a game that defendants choose to maintain at their own noblesse oblige, which I don't know, that's legal Latin, I don't know. Essentially, I'm bringing this story here because we have heard them make this argument before. But at a certain point, if you're Ubisoft, is it more important to protect your right to pull a game offline or not be the bad guy? Like, it's got to at some point just be like, why are you the ones out there making this case? Shouldn't you just be like, let's just settle and fade into the background or something? Why is it so important to Ubisoft?
I know it's Thursday, but what Ubisoft needs to learn is about shut the fuck up Friday.
Yeah,
because
this is that moment for that.
Online games get shut down all the time. Online games that people pay for get shut down all the time. It sucks. It's bad. And yes, you could even say it's anti-consumer. I get that. What's happening here is Ubisoft is like proud of it. And they are like, no, we did the right thing here by doing stuff like removing it from people's accounts if you owned it digitally. And then saying, yeah, no, it was never going to be here forever. Dude, just say, you know what? We did everything we could, but The Crew 2, we had that, and the Crew wanted to get shut down. That's how it works. You can't be kind of pompous about it,
Yeah.
That's the problem.
And I think that is a bigger problem for them, is being seen as this pompous, arrogant corporation that cares more about just, running a game out there, making some money, and then taking it away from players. And you already have an image issue as Ubisoft. You already have, they don't trust that your games are going to be good in the first place. And now they also don't trust that they're going to be there for a long amount of time. So, I don't know. If I'm Ubisoft, I'm just like saying, you know what? We hear you. We did mess up in this case. We're not going to undo what we've done with the crew, but in the future, maybe we'll try to build our games in such a way that you will be able to have some access to the game going forward, and we'll just build our games with that in mind. I think doing a little bit of extra work in the process of making a game so that it can run when you pull the servers is clearly a better choice long run than trying to win court cases against the people who buy your games. Like Ubisoft does not need to be the ones. They're already so hated by everybody.
Right. Or at the very least, like, leave it to the consumers, sort of just laissez-faire. We're not touching this anymore. We're not supporting it anymore. Servers are shut down, but we're also not going to remove it from your account if people like happen to figure something else out. We didn't see anything, you know, just look the other way, because even just saying nothing is better publicity than doubling down on your decision to shut it down. Just say, I saw in chat someone pointed out that you can just say the typical stuff of, this is how automotive games work. We have licensing in this game, it expires, can't support it forever. That's what happens with this genre of game. That's what happened here. It's unfortunate, but we're moving on from this game. If you just phrase it that way, just frame it that way, everything would have been better here, even if the exact same end result came out of this.
Yep, that's a really good point. I think, ideally what I would want from all this, obviously for the games to run forever, that'd be great. If you're going to have an online game, make it run forever, please. If you can't do that, then build in a mode that does just work offline. And then, I think the other ideal here would be you build the server client and you make it open source and you just release that to the crew, or to the crew audience, to the audience, and just say, hey, now it's on you guys. And I think there's people like, great, thanks, open source, we can handle it from here.
Yeah, back in the day, that's the kind of thing that would happen too when you get stuff like id Games, where they eventually release the source code because they're like, well, we're not really making money on this anymore. So screw it, like the server, browser, and setup and everything. Yeah, y'all can handle that. We're just, that's built into the purchase, I guess. That would be really cool. It's just, the word corporation has been said a lot this episode, and that's just where we're at with things,
Other Nintendo Switch Classic controllers are also said that they are only compatible with the NSO. This is an update to a story from yesterday where we mentioned the GameCube controller that they are going to be selling for the Switch 2 for NSO Classic games, Nintendo Classics. There was a little bit of fine print that said it's only compatible with Nintendo Classic games. And we brought this up because, as everyone, I'm like, all the other ones work with other games. You sort of just, sure, it doesn't have all the buttons, but if it does have enough buttons, the controller just kind of works. And it seems like maybe that this is going to be the exact same scenario, because apparently those other Nintendo Classic controllers, like for the NES, Super Nintendo, and N64, have all had similar fine print. And I think we all just kind of missed that. I missed that yesterday for sure.
I remember that after it was brought to my attention. I'm like, oh yeah, they did put a weird disclaimer on that. That's right.
And that's Nintendo loves to do that. They're like, if it's not going to work perfectly, we're just going to say it's not going to work at all. And then if people discover it, great.
Yeah, it's a nice little thing for them to discover. So that's, I don't know, maybe it gives me a little bit of hope, because if I'm going to be spending, was it $70 on this damn thing?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I would hope that at least works in games that have button mapping for GameCube stuff.
Right.
So, in Smash, yeah, I guess is that the one thing you're missing? Because there's the ZL. You can map it at system level. So
clicking sticks in. It might not have clickable sticks.
You're right. There it is. There it is. But even then, again, for games that have the mapping for it, like Smash, like Metroid Prime Remastered, it would be nice to use that one instead of having to bust out my Smash GameCube controller adapter, plug in the GameCube controller, and then make sure everything's set up properly as it were a Pro controller, which is how it usually works. So, yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for the headlines. Let me get the poll question up here. Actually, Shawn, I don't have that ready, so why I do that? Why don't you tell people where they could find you online and all that good stuff?
I mean, online, you can catch me over on Blue Sky, turboshawn.com, SHAWN, and otherwise doing stuff here, doing a lot of stuff here. We've been very busy putting a lot of stuff out. It's still, like we said at the top of the show, it is weird to think that all this Switch 2 stuff was the last week. We got a bunch of videos out on it if you want to go back and watch that. Obviously, we got good BCR and Bombcast talking about Switch 2. Dan and Jan talking about their experiences playing, well, Dan's experiences playing the Switch 2. And then, of course, we got more stuff here in the Power Block today. If you want to stay tuned, we'll have the GameSpot show after this. Jeff, you're going to be playing Blueprints later on in the day, right?
Yeah. I think, am I doing that next? Let me take a look at my calendar here real quick. I think I'm doing that.
It should be after the GameSpot show, right?
That's right. It's after the GameSpot show. GameSpot show and then Blueprints after that. That's right.
Yeah, so at like 1:30 Eastern. Yeah, so the plan is for you to start a fresh save file so people can just see what the game is like, and then like towards the end of the stream hop into like your regular save file so people can see the messed up stuff if they want to.
Exactly. If you want to stick around and see some stuff that I know what's going to be a spoiler and we're just going to avoid all that stuff, but there's some other stuff like you might be interested in or some other possibilities toward in the gameplay that you might not know is there, and maybe you weren't convinced. You can stick around if you want. But we'll see. We'll see how that goes, because I'm going to have to do some save management, because I don't think it has different save files, so I'll have to like back up my save and then bring that back into the game. So we'll see how it goes. All right. Poll question. Let's see. I have it right here from yesterday. If you can't afford a Switch 2, what do you want to say to Nintendo? I'll keep playing Switch 1, thank you, or drop the price. 37% says they'll keep playing their Switch 1. 63% say drop the price. We never really talked about like that Doug Bowser quote of, hey, for people who can't afford Switch 2, we still have the Switch 1. Very much echoing Don Matrick. It doesn't quite match Matrick.
It's a little different, because Matrick was like, basically saying like, you live in a country with bad internet, play the 360.
Yes.
Whereas
or you're like if someone in the Navy at sea and you loved having the Xbox 360, now you want to have an Xbox One. Well, too bad. You're serving our country. Yeah. Crazy things to say.
Whereas Doug Bowser is saying like, we know it's expensive. We made it expensive, but we're still going to support the Switch 1, and there's still a lot of good stuff out there. It's a little different, but just shades of Matrick.
Yep, maybe. Just a dumb thing to say. Clearly a dumb thing to say. Yeah.
Again, shut the fuck up, Friday. Just sometimes you got to just back off a little.
Yep. Your normal bullshit of, well, we just made it so good it's worth the price, that people would just be like, oh my God, they'd roll their eyes at that, but it would not be the same sort of.
There's a lot of iPhones out there in the world, and they do the same thing. So you know what? Sometimes that's just the approach.
Yep, absolutely. All right. New poll question. Let's see here. Do you expect a Switch 2 price increase now? Yes, but a smaller increase, and no. We'll get the results of that, talk about it on Game Breaking News here on the Power Block with Giant Bomb tomorrow. Speaking of the Power Block, Sean went over it, but yes, stay tuned here. We'll go right into the GameSpot show. After that, I will be playing Blueprints, and then Sean, we'll figure out how we're doing voicemail dump truck. Jan's off today, everybody. So
I got it. I got it. Don't worry.
There he is,
got
everybody.
that.
Fantastic.
I'll figure it out.
All right. I saw Mike in chat. Mike, can you do dump truck? Thank you.
All right. Sean, thanks so much for hanging out with me today and talk about video games, man. I think we got through this one no problem.
Yeah, I think this was a fun time, Jeff. Always a pleasure being on.
Likewise, man. All right. Thank you all for watching and listening. You're the best audience in gaming. Until next time, have a good one. Take care of yourself, and goodbye.